What's up, everybody? This is Senator James Coleman coming to you from Colorado, and welcome to the Champ I Am Summit. The Champ I Am Summit mission is to inspire, empower, and provide the resources to help you break away from overworking, overdoing, and underliving to finally exceed your potential and live your best life. Champ I Am is here to help you with health, relationships, business, finances, creativity, speaking, and more, so you can embrace your authentic self and take action to reclaim your happiness and realize your true potential. I'm glad you joined me today. Let's do this. What's up, everybody? This is State Senator James Coleman coming to you from Colorado, where I serve as Senate President Pro Tem. But before any of that, I think it's really important that we get to know one another before we talk about leadership and why leadership matters. Born and raised here in Denver, Colorado, I'm blessed to be married to my wife, Shayna. We've been together for 23 years, 14 of which married directly out of college. And we were blessed to have two children, twins, James Jr. and Naomi, who are 13. They'll be 14 coming up here in a few months. And I'm a man of faith. I grew up in church, going to church with my family. I was licensed and ordained as a minister when I was 13. And was really blessed to have an experience in my faith that roots me in the work that I do, whether it's here at the legislature or it's somewhere else. And so I'm really excited to be able to share why leadership matters with you. But I got to start off with how my story got me to where I'm at today. So as I said, I was born here in Denver, Colorado, moved away when I was about 8 months old with my mother. And when I got to Nevada, where my family historically had been from, we were able to live our lives, have opportunities to grow together, went through some hardships, and eventually I moved back here to Colorado when I was 11 years old. At that time, I did not have a relationship with my father, and I was blessed to build a relationship with him from the moment I returned back home here to Denver. And so that was a pivotal moment in my life because my dad had me when he was 50 years old. So when we connected, he was 61. He had had children before me, and he had done all the fun things you would do with your children. He had gone to the park and played ball. He had went to the movie theaters and watched movies. But with me, when I said, Dad, what are we going to do? He had served in the military for many years. He also drove trucks across the country to deliver goods and use that as a ministry platform. And so by the time we connected, he was retired. So his idea of a fun time with me was community service, going to soup kitchens, to feed the homeless, going to nursing homes to take care of our elders. And so that is how I've been conditioned. That is all I've ever known. And I found out later in life, of course, that that actually was a real blessing because I got a chance to learn from people that I may not have ever learned and learn through experiences that I may not have ever had. And so for me, that was a pivotal moment in my life as well, connecting with my father. At the age of 12, I was going to a school here in Denver called Smiley Middle School, now called Smiley at McCullough. And that school was a great school. The problem for me was I didn't like bullies. And if I saw someone getting picked on, I usually would try to take it into my own hands. Funny, here I am in a state legislature defending others, but I learn how to use my words and not use my hands. And so for me, I got kicked out of public schools when I was in sixth grade. And that experience landed me with two options. Either I was going to go to a juvenile program to get my education and be caught up in the system, or I was going to go to a private school, which my mother and I could not afford. And so we were blessed to get a scholarship from an organization that allowed me to go to a local, small private school at a Baptist church, not 5 minutes away from my grandmother's house. So at this school, it was the first time I had a Black teacher. It was the first time that I had a Black principal, Vivian Wilson. And it was the first time that I was taught Black history on a regular basis. Black history at this school, Union Baptist Excel Institute, was not just an elective. It was a part of the curriculum. And so for me, that was a big deal because I got a chance to learn not only about national figures in Black community, but also those locally. One of which is posted on my wall here in my office, the former mayor, first Black mayor of Denver, Wellington Webb. And he walked into my classroom and I did not know we could be the mayor. I did not know we could serve in such positions. And he served at a time where he was the mayor of 500,000 people here in Denver. And so that for me was my version of Obama. That taught me that I could be something great. And so fast forward, I met my wife in 8th grade at the next school, and we were blessed to go through high school together, middle school and then high school. And then even in college, I had an opportunity to go out of state to Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then my wife stayed here and went to Colorado State University. We graduated from college, and as I said, in 2010, we got married, bought a home, and had our children. I started thinking more and more about what my role was as an adult, as a parent, as a husband, and in our community. And an opportunity presented itself in 2016 to run for office, not the opportunity that I currently sit in at the state legislature. It was an opportunity to serve on our local Denver Public School Board. There was a vacancy, and the vacancy committee was about 22 people who were going to go after this one position to represent our community for the Denver Public Schools. And after I made an announcement that I wanted to run and be in public service, a lot of the community said, James, if you're ready now, this is what we need you to do. And so I ended up running for state house. I hopped in our seat to run really late. And I ran posed with 2 other individuals. I've never worked so hard for anything in my life. I made sure that I knocked every door, that I went to every town hall, that I engaged in every community activity, which are things that I was going to do anyways. But I made sure that I did even more. And we went to bed losing our first election for the state house, House District 7, which if you ever fly into Denver, Colorado, most people fly into Colorado through our capital city. You fly into my district, and the district, the airport is in my district. Went to bed losing that election and woke up winning by 84 votes. And so I was blessed to win and serve House District 7 for 4 years in the House. I served in a leadership position there as House Majority Whip, counting votes and making sure that everybody knew what policies we were discussing were coming to the floor that day. And then in addition to that, I ran for state Senate in 2020. And was blessed to win my election to the state Senate. And so here we are in 2024, if you're watching this, at a later date, running for my reelection. And it's just really been a blessing, a learning experience, built some great relationships. But one thing that I learned through this whole process is that governance matters. For me, I think this job is comprised of 3 major roles. One is policy. At the end of the day, elected officials are policy makers. Second is community. We have to be involved in community, and I'll get into that a little bit later because that helps inform us as to who we are and what we need to be doing. But governance, making sure that we're all aligned, that we're all working together, that we have decorum, that we're acting professionally, because you can have all the great bill ideas you want, but if you can't work with people, you don't communicate well, you're not listening and understanding them, even if you disagree on a policy, that you don't have to be disagreeable, another principle that I'll share with you at a later point in this presentation, then you're never going to get that bill passed, and you're never going to get it signed by the governor, and you're never going to get it implemented because you may not even work with the people who are going to do the implementation at the state level in your idea of a bill, right? And so all those pieces are really important. So for me, governance matters. I'll start off by talking about leadership and governance. So there's a distinction between policy and process. As I said, the goal of governance is to objectively lead and give everyone an opportunity to participate in the passage of policy to protect the democratic process. Lawmakers must be responsible with the power that has been entrusted to us. I ran a bill. It was Senate Bill 23-149. And in Colorado, if you see the 2-3 or 2-4, that means that's the year that it was run. And so this bill was run in 2023, last year. It was Senate Bill 149. And it was about higher education, student financial aid for youth mentors. And so this is an example of sound governance in action. So before I ran this bill in the legislative session in 2023, I went to our Department of Higher Ed Executive Director, Angie Piccioni, who happened to serve here in the legislature a number of years before me. So she knows the process to get a bill passed, but even more so, she knows how important it is to get it implemented. We ran this bill because we have a lot of youth here in Colorado that need mentorship, that need support services, that need counseling and being able to go and speak with someone. Mental health, not just here in Colorado, but across the country is really an important factor in whether or not a child or a young person will be successful in life. The ratio of students to counselors here in schools in Colorado is one counselor rather to every 350 students, which means you'll probably only see your school counselor if you're a high schooler one time in 4 years. And so we figured, what could we do in order to help more of our students have access to someone just to talk to, and especially none more than someone closer to them in age, one of their peers. And so we were able to run this bill that ultimately said that if you're a college student, we want to provide funding for you in the form of tuition assistance, $1,500 a semester that you mentor one of our youth in our high school programs. And so if you're a college student, you're able to mentor a student for a year for $3,000 towards tuition assistance, which not only provides support services from a mental health perspective to our high school students, but it also helps you cover the cost of college. Now, this is really important because most folks are looking at college and seeing that it's really expensive. And that not only is a deterrent to going to college, but it's also a deterrent to figuring out your school to career pipeline. And we really focus on making sure our young people in high school, as well as our college students, have opportunities for careers. And so this is a great opportunity for us to help our students, but also our college students from a mental health perspective and tuition assistance. But I spoke with Dr. Angie Piccioni about this beforehand. I had a conversation with my colleagues. We stakeholdered this policy with different folks who were involved in making sure this is being implemented, so that when the bill got to the legislative session and it went through the process, it wasn't met with a bunch of resistance, that the governor didn't seek to veto it. He signed the bill, and that his State Department director that he appointed, Executive Director Angie Piccioni, was able to implement the bill and immediately created a website for our college students to go online and apply for this opportunity to be a mentor in partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is a local and a national organization that does the background checks, does the due diligence and training for anyone who wants to be a mentor. This is an example of, again, sound governance in action, that it wasn't just an idea that we wanted to change a problem and have a solution to that problem, but that we could also make sure that we didn't just run a bill for a good photo op and a bill signing, that the bill was going to be implemented and actually change lives. And so for me, I'm really excited that we were able to run that policy. I have this idea of doing things in collaboration, and I call it the Coleman way. My philosophy is that whoever you are trying to help, I don't care if it's in politics or it's in your business or it's in community service, whatever it might be, maybe even at your own home, whoever you were trying to help and support and love must be at the table to identify the problem you were trying to solve and to work toward the solutions that ultimately solve that problem. I've never been homeless, yet homelessness is a critical concern, not only here in Colorado, but across the country. So I might want to help someone who was homeless no longer be homeless, find a job, find opportunity to grow and improve their life and their situation. But how could I truly help them unless I understood where they were coming from and had been in their position? So what we've sought to do here in Colorado is we look for individuals who maybe are homeless and say, look, or have been homeless, we want to make sure you're at the table when we're creating homeless policy to address the situation. For folks who have been incarcerated in the criminal justice system, or justice involved, as we like to say here in Colorado, I need to make sure you're at the table if you are currently incarcerated or have been and came out of that situation and you're thriving, in order to inform me on what the policy should look like. So the community is a second point, in addition to the individual who has gone through whatever we're trying to help support other people to come out of. The community must show up and participate, right? I always say that the important day is election day. We encourage people to vote. Your vote matters. That's great. You look, the next most important day after that is the day after, because you don't send elected officials or in your business assign a job to someone and say, okay, just go do that, without wanting to make sure you're there to support them in order to be successful. And so I always ask, in my case, my neighbors, my constituents, please come here to the Capitol. Please engage in our committee hearings so you can testify and share your perspective on why this policy matters, or come see me and just look at the process and understand how it works, how government works. I was 25 years old when I first walked into this building here at the Colorado Capitol. Born and raised here, as I said earlier, and my family and I drove by this building. a million times, but I'd never been in as a student, doing a field trip or anything. So I was 25 when I first walked into the building, and then I was 29 when I ran for office. My first impression when I came here was intimidation. This is sacred space. You know, you think about government in the form of Washington, D.C., and our historic institutions. And, you know, you really are concerned and nervous about meeting elected officials. And I got to tell you, I try to bring people here as much as possible. As a matter of fact, we had some individuals come to the Capitol today to make sure that they knew this is their house. They belong here, to dispel that myth that this is a place where they don't have confidence. And so we wanted to make sure that they showed up and participated. It's important that you do that in any facet of life, whether it's business again or politics or whatever that might be. What I find is often missing is active listening to the community, and particularly to those for whom we're trying to help solve those problems. We actively work to determine a collective solution for everyone. And that's important because what I think is a good idea, you might not think is the right solution. And it's important that I do hear your perspective and you hear mine so that we can ultimately come to a collective solution that works for everyone. Obviously, in my line of work, we have a lot of partisanship. We have Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated. And in this building, there's all Democrats and Republicans. That said, every single bill that we pass has to have a majority vote. My goal is not just to have the majority of the party, it's to have the majority of the entire chamber, the entire legislature, the House and the Senate, as well as the governor signing on to a bill, signing the bill into law. And so for me, I'm so proud to announce that here in Colorado, about 85% of our bills that we pass are bipartisan, which means that either they had both a Democrat and a Republican who prime sponsored that bill all the way through the process, or it could just mean that both Democrats and Republicans voted yes on that bill. And so we have 85% of our bills made so that there's a collective solution for everyone. Also, don't compromise your values in the process of collaborating. So when we talk about this in the form of politics, we talk about compromising what we ultimately want to get done in the form of a bill that will be turned into law that will ultimately make the impact that we seek. So we're talking about changing the language, legal language of a bill, that it would be implemented a certain way. It's okay to compromise on that, right? But don't compromise on who you are. Don't compromise on who sent you to do your job, whether it's, again, in politics or in business. Maybe it's who you are as a parent. Maybe it is who you are as a student if you're in college. You make sure you show up, and you show up as your authentic self. But when it comes to trying to find a collective solution for a problem, just know compromise is okay. There's an African proverb that talks about there are 10 people. They're sitting together and they have to make a decision before they go home, before they go rest, before they go to bed, before they go eat. They're forced to make a decision. And each of them only gets 10% of what they wanted, but they got something that they wanted. And with 10 of them, and each of them getting 10%, they got 100% of ultimately what they needed as a collective. And so that's really important. And then what I'll say is a sign of true stakeholdering is when everyone gets some of what they want to solve a problem. And ultimately, we see that happening in so many capacities, but make sure that in your life, you think about, you know, am I getting what I need? Am I helping others to get what they need? Because we're all on the same team. So ultimately for me, I like to talk about this in the context of elections, of politics. Do you believe that your voice matters? You know, one of the biggest things that I've tried to focus on in every time I've run a campaign is knocking on doors in communities where people usually don't vote. And the reason why is because if you're a candidate, you know that you want to get as many votes as you possibly can. And we have a propensity to go to communities that we see have a higher voter turnout. For me, I think that's a travesty that we don't encourage people to vote. And I ask myself, why did I not vote at one point? Or, you know, why do I feel like people don't vote today? And I ask people, and what they tell me sometimes is, what does it matter? You're just going to do what you're going to do when you get in there anyways. You're not going to really represent me. It's probably rigged. The elections are probably rigged. My vote is just me filling out a bubble on a ballot, and I send it in, and it's not really being counted. I mean, there's all these different things we've heard about, you know, the things that have happened when it comes to elections recently. And we want to make sure that you know your voice does matter, that you deserve to have your voice heard, and that when you vote, it is because you're valued. We value you. And so for me, I think it's important that electeds need to hear from the people for a few reasons. One, the best people again, to help solve a problem are the ones who've overcome that problem. And they're the experts having first-hand experience and direct impact. Number two, it takes the pressure, quite frankly, off of me as an elected official to do all the work alone. Otherwise, it creates a bureaucratic silo. And I'll just share really quickly, even if you're not in politics, if you're in business, you might want to ask the janitor, you might want to ask the receptionist, you might want to ask your employees, how do we do a better job of creating an environment for you so that this is a great place to come and work? I'm going to give a shout out to an individual that I know well. Her name is Susie Hart. She's the general manager at the Gaylord Rocky Mountain Convention Center here in Colorado. And as you might know, there are Gaylord Convention Centers rather across the country. There are ones in Texas, in Florida, in DC, in Tennessee, and here in Colorado. I just met with her this week, and it was amazing because I had a chance to stop one of the folks who was waiting on our table and just say, hey, how do you like working here? And he told me from top to bottom, he loved working here because he felt like he mattered. He loved working there because they actually provided a meal for all their employees, breakfast and lunch. While you're there working a shift, you get a break. And it's not like a small assortment of items to eat from. You can eat a full entree of food and have different variety of options. And it was amazing to hear how much he appreciated where he was working versus where he had worked in the past. And so that for me was really powerful. And again, that creates a better work environment for that person, but it created also a better outcome for that business. And so whether you're in business or politics, like I said, or even as a family, I think it's really important that you make sure that everybody else is involved because it takes the pressure off of you, and you do not have to have all the answers. Your job ultimately as a leader is to execute. And so the last piece I'll mention again is that community support provides legitimacy, required evidence, and valid proof points when it comes to whatever you're doing. And so when someone asks me here at the Capitol, we want to run this bill, that's great. You want to solve this problem, that's great. I would love to know, where is this a problem? And who said it was a problem? What's the data behind that problem? And you have a solution. Where else has this solution been tried and how has it worked? My point is, whatever decisions you're making, it should be advised. It provides that legitimacy, and not only from a policy perspective or a data perspective, but it also provides legitimacy because you can point to the people in your community and say, this person told me that this is what they needed. And so it's not just a selfish ambition. It's about what truly is best for community. And so, look, the last piece I'll mention outside of support is accountability, right? Government, in my case, we need that political pressure from the people. You might recall that before the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed into law, that Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the president at the time, told Dr. King and the other individuals in the room as they were talking about the Civil Rights Act, that I need you to make me do it. It's not that I don't want to do it. It's just that there's going to be a lot of other people who don't think this is a great idea. That political pressure isn't just a pressure for your elected official to do something, but it's also that backup, that support, so that they can see, look, there's a lot of pressure on me to get this done. And this is why I believe it's the right thing to do. We here in Colorado signed, if not the first, one of the first police brutality bills post George Floyd's murder here in Colorado and in the country. And so this bill was passed in part because, unfortunately, he was murdered and on television. It was a national, international televised incident. And we remember being in the House here at the legislature and hearing thousands of people marching, protesting, rallying in order for us to pass this policy, and hearing their voices literally holding us accountable with that political pressure helped us to pass that bill. And so I'm really excited about the fact that we have that political support, but also that accountability to get things done. How do you foster community engagement, right? So whatever it is you're doing, the community must believe and know that they're valued. So if the community is not engaged, the right leaders to create and affect positive change may not be in position, right? So we're talking about making sure that we're getting things done, making sure that the community is involved in that process, and making sure that people who have actually overcome whatever the hardship is you're trying to solve in your business, in your life, with your family, or in politics, has that option to overcome whatever it is they're trying to overcome. But you have to have the right people in the position, because if you don't have the right people in the position, then you may not be able to get those things done. So ultimately, what I've talked about is increasing access to public office. Employers compensating electeds during session to break down barriers to entry is a critical piece in my position to make sure that we can do this work. So I will tell you this. When I got elected, the salary for state elected officials in Colorado was $32,000 a year. Now, I can't complain because I just had an opportunity to sit down with the Speaker of Virginia, and we were having a conversation. And he let me know that today the salary in Virginia is $18,000 a year. Okay, so $32,000 back in 2016, 2017, when I got elected and began serving. Today, it's $42,000. So they increased us to $10,000. What does that tell you? Well, what it tells you is in a world, in a country, in our state, here in Colorado, where it's becoming increasingly even more expensive to live, to provide, just to have a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food on the table, right? The basic things we were all taught were important growing up, is going to prohibit, limit, and discriminate who can actually participate in certain things. Well, in this case, when I got elected, was the youngest member in the legislature. I was blessed by my employer to support me May through December, because we have a part-time legislature in Colorado that's only in session January through May. And so January through May, I'm able to get compensated from the state, and May through December, I was able to go back to my employer and do my work. And from then, I've been able to create different entities and organizations or nonprofits that I founded that have allowed me to not only make an impact, but also provide for my family in partnership with what I'm able to do here at the state, as well as compensation. Because of that, when I ran 4 years later for the Senate, I was still the youngest person in the entire Senate, maybe the second or third youngest person in the legislature still. And so what I mean by that is most of the folks that I serve with have been really blessed. They've worked hard, right? They might be, let's say, seasoned. So they have either jobs that pay them the money to afford them to do this work. They're independently wealthy. They're retired. And so they're able to do this job. Most people only take advantage of opportunities in life, whether it's elected office or something else, if they can afford it, afford to even run for office, let alone afford to serve once you get in. There was an article even recently here in Colorado where some of my colleagues talked about the fact that they do rideshare, they do Uber, whatever it is they can do, and they have to do in order to afford to continue to do this work. They've done it. I've even tried out Uber because for me, it was important to afford to do the work, but I also saw that as a plus to connect with our community as I'm driving them around town. So for me, I think it's really important that we figure out ways to continue to break those barriers of entry. Otherwise, we're not going to have the right people per se in positions. And so thank you so much again for your support of your local elected officials, of me and others. Your children will probably thank you later on in life for the work you did to raise and provide for them. There are a lot of things that go, I think, ultimately, underappreciated, but we appreciate you no matter what your role is. If you're watching this and you're making a sacrifice to be a leader, we just want to say we thank you and we appreciate you for doing the work. Look, I'll give this charge to my fellow elected officials, but I'll also ask you, if you're not elected, to hold your elected officials accountable and give them this charge. Number one, ask them and ask yourself, if you're an elected official, if you're creating an environment of belonging and collaboration to increase civic engagement. This is really important because people aren't going to be where they don't feel welcome. All right. So we want to make sure that you're inviting them to a space where they can learn, they can engage, show up also in community. I think is really important because you want them to see you in the community, but find a way to let them know that you're just a human being, just like them. You put your pants on one leg at a time. A lot of times people in leadership are on pedestals and we get elevated. And look, we work hard. We're in positions of leadership to get work done. But my personal belief is the higher up you go in leadership, the higher and more of a servant you become. And so it doesn't mean that you're untouchable, that you should be accessible. So that's really important. Number two, equip community members to impact lives and make lasting change. I've been blessed, as I said, to serve in the legislature here in Colorado for 8 years. And not every year, but in the beginning, it was like every year I had a new legislative aide. And what I took pride in was making sure that this wasn't just a stop for them and that was it. That after they finished working with me at the legislature, it served as a launch pad to another career where they were able to make more money or make more of an impact because they had a chance to work with me. And the reality is our aides to this day, but also even back then, especially, just didn't get paid enough to continue the work. We actually ran out of money after session was over to compensate them through the fiscal year, right? And so we had to have an opportunity for them to move on. And so, my first aide, I had an opportunity to work in my office, went to go work for the governor. My second aide went to go work for the mayor here in Denver. My third aide went to go work at the Pentagon after she finished up work here at the legislature in Colorado. And then another aide had a chance to go and work after that at a national foundation outside of our state in Virginia. And then my next aide went to go work on for the Department of Higher Education. And shoot, my next aide will probably be the next president of the United States. All that being said, I love to figure out a way to equip community members to impact lives and make lasting change, because you're only one person. And while you may want to be Superwoman, Superman, you cannot do it all yourself. You have to equip others in order to support you and do the work, but do the work themselves as well. That way you can help more and more people. 3, you have to utilize the platform to create opportunities for community members. I've had folks who work in our community come up and participate here in the legislature and engage and do different work. And because of that, maybe I wrote a letter of recommendation. Maybe they needed a letter of reference, but I could say that they had worked with me, an intern at our office, or whatever that might have been, in order for them to be able to go on and do something else. It's not just about working with my office, but it's also about knowing that this position doesn't just give me opportunity to pass policy. It actually allows me to leverage and influence and even a perceived power to help other people, whatever it is they might want to do. And so I'm really excited about being able to continue to use my platform to do that. Ask yourself, how can you use your platform in business, politics, whatever it might be, to elevate others, to create more opportunities for them? And then lastly, number 4, when it comes to elected officials in particular, I learned this from, as I mentioned earlier, Mayor Wellington Webb, former mayor of Denver, first Black mayor of Denver. He said to me, keep your authorizing environment, your voters, top of mind at all times. So I want you to ask yourself this question. You're in a position, whatever it might be. How did you get there? And who hired you, or who elected you? Or did you start your own business, and who invested in you? Who is your authorizing environment? Because no one does anything by themselves. No one is successful independently of others. So for me, my authorizing environment are the voters in Senate District 33. My district is comprised of multiple communities here in Denver that ultimately put me in a position to be here. I did not get here because I just got hired. I didn't get here because I ran across the finish line faster than somebody. I got here because people cared enough to open up their ballot packet, fill out their ballot, and send it back in, or vote in person in order for me to be here. Every time I have an opportunity to vote on a ballot, I always look at the fact that there's a name next to a bubble and someone filled in that bubble next to my name. That's powerful. I appreciate that. When I was growing up, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my grandfather, my father, all in all, they told me there's nothing more powerful than someone believing in you. And the actual act of filling out, the very act of filling out a ballot bubble with someone's name next to it says you believe in them enough that they're going to do a job. And in this case, they're going to do a job to serve you, to support you, to help you be successful, to help your kids have access to high quality education, to help you have access to a good paying job, to help you and your family have a place to live that's affordable, so that you can have a place to lay your head at night. All these pieces are really critical to remember that they believed in you, whatever that might be. If you're a business owner, people don't have to come and support your business. I mean, there's a Starbucks popping up all over the place. There's all these different coffee shops you could go to. Why go to that one? Probably because you made them feel special, made them feel valued, right? And so you want them to continue to believe in you. You have to do that work to know your authorizing environment, who authorized you to be in that position. And for me, I'll never forget that. So thank you for those of you who watch this and may live in Denver who voted for me. I want to touch on activating our agency to co-create change. The community needs to understand the importance of building relationships. It takes time. I remember I would talk to folks and they say, man, James just has it easy. He seems like he's able to get things that he needs access to for himself, for others. And I tell them, I say, you know what? I'm only as strong as the people that I surround myself with. I'm only as strong as the relationships that I've taken to build, taken time to build. And those relationships, which is really critical, they need not be transactional. They need to be relational. They need to be people that know, if you know them, that you care for them, that you love them, that you're thinking about their best interests. And so for me, I took years to build relationships, and I still build relationships to this day. Every day I feel like I get an opportunity to meet somebody new. And while it's hard to remember a lot of names, which I try my best to do, I remember how they made me feel and how I made them feel. I remember their faces. I remember their stories. I've shared a couple stories even today, just with people that I met within the last couple of weeks or years before. And so for me, it's about building those relationships. It takes time to cultivate. It's like a seed. You plant that seed in good soil. You water it. You make sure it gets sunlight. And over time, it grows. And because of that, you're able to access that person. They're able to access you for whatever you might need. And by the way, don't go to people when you need them. Reach out to them before you need them, because you should be reaching out to them to build a relationship, not just to get something from them. Next up is communicating, right? Community needs to understand the importance of communication, listening, fostering intentional dialogue, and caring for humanity. I feel as if we live in a time where we don't do this enough. I remember saying, my grandmother told me, she said, I listen because I already know what I know, but I want to know what you know. So the funny thing about listening is it's actually selfish. It's a selfish act. She used to also tell me, don't be telling everybody your business. And that's just, that's a principle that we had in our household growing up. So I have a natural conditioning rather to listen, because I want to know. I need the information. And then again, intentional dialogue. Here we are having this conversation. Now, I knew I was coming to share this presentation with you, but it wasn't like I just showed up and thought, top of mind, I'm just going to start talking and see where it takes me. We actually sat down, and my team does this with every opportunity we are given to present, to really think about the questions. We ask, what questions do you want us to answer? What's the outcome? So that intentional dialogue where we're really focused on each other and we're not looking behind the person you're talking to while you're talking to that person. You've probably been to a networking event and you went to go talk to somebody, and the whole time you're talking to them, they're talking to you and looking the other direction, right? You want to be really intentional and focus on that dialogue. And why is that important? Because at the end of the day, we care about humanity, right? This isn't about your skin color, your ethnicity, your nationality, your gender. It's not about all those different things. When you really come back to it and you say, look, these things matter, and I see you and I value that in you, and I recognize your individuality, how unique you are and how you've been created. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. Let's treat each other like human beings. Next up is being transparent with one another. So listen, when it comes to elected office, I got to tell you, in this building, your word is your bond. And you break your word, you are tarnished forever. And that probably is true in your case in business or in life, with friends, right? And so for me, one of the things that I think is really important in keeping your word and being honest is also transparency. Look, there are certain things that maybe you can't disclose, or someone asks you to keep confidential. Completely understand that. But in my role, I have to be transparent in order for me to be successful. I have to tell you all the ins and outs, the details, the why. I can't just say, hey, secretly I'm doing this, or try to hide my hand. I find that when you're being transparent and not trying to be secretive, that people really appreciate and respect that. And they know that you're going to be a straight shooter. You're going to come to them and tell them directly the truth. And so that's really important, to be transparent, because at the end of the day, people know they can trust you. Look, I always, ask and unearth. I try to unearth the why for change. You probably have done things in your life and you just did it to do it, right? And at some point I have too. We've all done that. But I have been a lot more intentional the older I've gotten to say to myself, why am I doing this? What is the ultimate outcome of this conversation, of this meeting, of this effort? Why are we doing this? And for me, it's really critical to think about that, because you want to start with the end in mind. You don't want to waste your time. Your time is valuable, and others' time is valuable as well. So always think about your why and making sure that that is a critical component of all that you're doing. Work together to build solutions. We touched on that. You can't do it by yourself. You have to do it collectively. Shifting perceptions and mindsets to agree on the human imperative. At the end of the day, there are things that are unique about all of us, but there are things that are pretty consistent needs in all of us, the bare necessities, right? And so make sure you think about that when you're having conversations with folks, the humanity of this person. Whenever I meet with someone to talk business, I get to know them. Who are you? What's your story? Where are you from? Do you have a family? Tell me their names. Are they playing sports? Are they in school? What grade are they in? People want to know that you care about who they are because that's important to them, but also you start to find connections. I just went to the bank today to open up a bank account with my wife for our children. And when I went to go to open up the bank account, just in conversation, getting to know the bank executive, I found out that they were related to someone that we knew. And that probably is a very small degree of separation in your life as well. So it's important to build the relationship around the human imperative so that we treat each other with humanity, but also probably get to know each other and know that we're not that much different from one another. You can see yourself by doing that in the fabric of America, that this country is a melting pot, but it's also a mosaic. It's not that everybody is the same, but it's that we recognize everyone's uniqueness, but that we're all on the same team. Also, being relatable and understanding others' realities erodes prejudice. You probably talked to somebody and thought something about them just wasn't true, but you assume so. And until you talk to them, you found out that that wasn't a fact, right? And so it's important that we get to know each other and be relatable. I love doing that in my position because people love to say senator, and people love to invite me to events that I probably wouldn't get invited to if I wasn't an elected official. And I find myself reminding myself who I am and that I am just like them and that I'm not more special than somebody else. That being said, I make myself relatable. And once you let that guard down, you start to see people being more relatable with you as well. And then look, last thing I'll say on this in terms of activating our agency to co-create change is our network is our net worth. My network is my net worth. Your network is your net worth. When we think about net worth, we think in context of how much money you have, how much wealth you've built for yourself. But I'll tell you, there are many things that I've been able to do for people that did not cost, but because I was in a position to support them, I leveraged that network for them, or they leveraged their network for me. And so those are some of the ways we can activate our agency to co-create change. Agency in action, what does it look like? Here at the Capitol, it looks like attending state committee hearings, which I said earlier. Maybe if you're at the city level, it's attending a city council meeting in a town hall. It looks like writing and calling and visiting your elected officials to advocate for the changes that we need. It's really important that we hear from you in any capacity. It looks like sometimes organizing visits, again, to that city council and the Capitol. Even if you're not coming to testify, as I said earlier, speak at a committee hearing, just show up, just be involved, just be engaged. You would be amazed at how powerful it is for me to look outside of the glass in our Senate chamber at the lobby or up in the gallery, Senate gallery we have where the public can come and watch us do our work during the legislative session, January through May, and see friends and family. For me, I can say, hey, that person is backing me up. So it's really critical that you come and visit your city council or your state capitol. Mobilize community to show up and speak out. As I've said earlier, it's important that we hear from all of those voices. So that way it's not just something that I thought of or your elected official thought of or you thought of as a leader, but that this is a solution and an idea that came from the collective. And lastly, I'll say about this particular piece, finalize or financially support your elected official who is doing the real work and advancing tangible, practical solutions. It is hard to afford to do this work. And so like what that looks like is making sure folks get elected, running for office. Part of the benefit of my campaign is that I'm able to use some of the funds for my campaign if I have any left over after the campaign for office expenses. We don't have a budget here at the state level in order for us to afford a printer to print off documents or ink for the printer or pens and pencils. I mean, we have to pay for those things ourselves. And so we appreciate you financially supporting. I said this earlier, vote, vote, vote. Your vote is important. Your vote matters. Make sure you show up and engage. Otherwise, when something goes wrong or you don't like the way something is happening, you know that you had an opportunity to engage and you did it. Your vote is where you first start off. That way, when you talk to your elected official, you can honestly tell them, I voted for you, and I'm asking you to at least hear me out, even if we disagree. And not only you, but encourage your family, your friends, and neighbors to vote as well. I'll say this about voting. We had a recent election, and this individual will not be named, but they told me after the election was over, they had a conversation with some people who were going to vote for them. And they said, hey, man, just want you to know, I am voting for you. And they said, man, the election was last week. They didn't vote. And because of that, didn't work out for this individual, right? And they are probably the better candidate. But I've seen that happen in small instances. I've even told you that I won my first election only by 84 votes. Every vote matters. The day of my election, I was walking into people's homes before the ballot drop cutoff time at 7 p.m. I was going to pick up ballots from people because I knew they hadn't filled it out, because they were on a list of people who hadn't filled their ballots out. And so I would walk in and say, listen, even if you're not supporting me, your vote matters. You're in my community. You live around a block from me. I think it's important that you vote. Please vote. And I'm happy to take it for you. And they did. And I took it in. Because of that, I truly believe I won my election. Because of that hard work at the last, final hour, 84 votes was all I won by. And so thank you for that. I'll wrap up this conversation with you by saying thank you. Just having gratitude to be able to share this with you. When I was approached to speak about this topic of leadership, especially leadership and governance, I thought, man, I'm honored that people want to hear my perspective and want to know what I think. But I'm hoping, and I want to challenge you, that you don't leave this conversation just having heard this, like another podcast or another vlog or another interview. I hope that you hear this and know that you matter, that you're valuable, and that the people you're serving, or if the people who serve you as an elected official need you, they need your support, they need your help, they need your accountability. But I also want to say thank you. Thank you for voting. Thank you for being involved in our democracy. Thank you for running for office. Thank you for doing the work that's thankless and sometimes not being able to afford to do the work, because we need you. We need good people more now than ever in the world in which we live in order for us to do the work. And so thank you for just stepping up. So thank you for me, but thank you for doing the work. I'm honored to serve with you. I'm honored to serve here at the state legislature in Colorado. And I look forward to continuing to do the work here in Colorado and across our country with you in years to come. As I always say before we finish up, whatever you're doing, let's get it done. Let's do this. And we're proud of you.